good advice is crucial from people you can trust, 15 cabinet members are a presidential must. The cabinet is a group of people who head various government departments. At the beginning of a new term, the president gets to choose his cabinet members. They are usually experts in their fields, and often they are personal or political friends of the president. In the spirit of checks and balances, the president's choice must be approved by the Senate. The oldest cabinet department is the Department of State. The members of the State Department travel around the world promoting human rights and trying to help resolve conflicts. The cabinet system is not specifically outlined in the Constitution. It originated in Great Britain, and in America it goes all the way back to George Washington, whose cabinet had 4 departments in 1789: State, Treasury, War, and Office of Attorney General. Departments have been added over the years as America's needs grow. Other departments include transportation, energy, education, labor, agriculture, and others. 20-some amendments were voted into law. A changing constitution was something they foresaw. Miss Catt was an activist who gladly helped when asked to launch a new amendment, and after 30 years it passed. On the side it says, "We have talked about the fact that the amendments are very difficult to get passed into law. The 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote in 1920. It took 30 years to pass." Carrie Chapman Catt was a teacher and one of the first female school superintendents in America. She was a leader in the campaign of women's suffrage, meaning the battle of women's right to vote. Ms. Catt was president of the National American Women's Suffrage Association from 1900 to 1904, and from 1915 to 1920, when the 19th Amendment was passed. Victory did not slow her down. Ms. Catt went on to establish the League of Women's Voters, which to this day educates citizens about important political issues and encourages people to vote intelligently. 40 fish looking nervous, worried about pollution, waiting for politicians to come up with the solution. 50 stars for 50 states. 13 stripes have meaning too. As for the colors, they couldn't be other than the familiar sight of red, white, and blue. The 50 stars on the U.S. flag represent the 50 states. The 13 stripes embody the original 13 colonies. In chronological order, by joining the Union as states, they are Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Georgia, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Maryland, South Carolina, New Hampshire, Virginia, New York, North Carolina, and Rhode Island, all between 1787 and 1790. Not much is really known about the origin of the Stars and Stripes, except the very first American flag in 1775 incorporated the British Union flag, also known as the Continental Flag. This first flag was chosen by George Washington to celebrate the creation of the Continental Army. No one particular person designed the U.S. flag. It evolved gradually over time. Originally, each star and each stripe was meant to represent a state, but eventually it was decided to add only a star for each new state. In addition to the national flag, each state has its own flag, as well as its own state constitution and its own state symbols. Every state has elected officials such as governors, state senators, and state representatives. 60 votes were taken from varying points of view on who should be in charge and what title he should use. It says on the side, after the American Revolutionary War was won, and before there was a national government in place, each state was more or less in charge of itself. This allowed for sort of chaos. For example, when Rhode Island decided to print a huge amount of money that was actually worthless, the whole national economy was put at risk. Soon enough, a constitutional convention was called. State delegates met in Philadelphia in 1787 to develop a plan for a strong federal government, so things like printing money would be regulated or have rules. The convention went on for months, with much debate and compromise. The question of what to call America's new leader was voted on 60 times alone. Should America's have a king, a president? John Adams suggested the title His Highness the President of the United States. What about the question on how the states could have equal representation in government? even though some were much bigger than others. George Washington was chosen to preside over the convention. With great leadership and keen sense of fairness, he maintained order, aimed arguments and disagreements, and guided the convention to a successful outcome. Ballots must be counted. It's the democratic way. 70s just for starters on a long election day. 80 fabulous roses transmitting a heavenly scent. Gardeners love to grow them, including one president. On the side it says George Washington began planning for a garden at the White House by buying land from a tobacco planter named Davy Burns. That land is now the south lawn of the White House. Washington was an enthusiastic gardener who loved to breed roses. How pleased he would have been that a couple hundred years later, in 1986, the rose became our country's official flower. The Englishman Tom Paine was an enthusiastic writer. He turned 90 American readers each into a fighter. It says on the side, an Englishman was greatly responsible for turning mass public opinion in America towards the cause of independence from England. While visiting England, founding father Benjamin Franklin became friends with Thomas Paine. Paine wanted to travel to America. Franklin encouraged him and wrote letters of introduction so that the English friend would be well received when he got to America. Tom Paine was a keen political writer and thinker. He wrote with great feeling about the revolutionary cause and shared America's desire for freedom. 100 senators in total, 2 from every state, working hard in Congress with a House to legislate.